Hello out there, my nonprofit whisperers. I am so excited that you are back and ready to join us for a next episode. This episode is very exciting because it's all about that strategic plan, folks, especially after a year like 2020 with COVID and so many other uncertainties that occurred. This is now more critical than ever before, and having a couple of plans, just in case. So I welcome you into this new episode with Jim and I, my co-host, Jim Dempsey, myself, Erika Gerena. You're going to get over 50 years of experience in this nonprofit sector throughout various sectors of society and at various local, regional, national, and international level. And so we're trying to bring to you an entire holistic approach to the work that we're doing and sharing with you the stories and the experiences that we've had on this journey with the privilege of doing this very, very important work. You mean a lot to me. Please subscribe so that I know who you are and share this with as many people as you know. So without further ado, we're going to dive into strategic planning.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Dempsey, and 36-year vet of working in nonprofit organizations. I've got with me my co-host, Erika Gerena, who has 22 years in nonprofit organization leadership. And both of us are here as the nonprofit whisperers, and we are here to express to you just our appreciation and begin to communicate a little bit for you on some areas that we believe are going to be very, very helpful. Our broadcast today, our episode, is directed towards setting the plan for the next year. That essentially is strategic planning, and strategic planning is such an important part of our yearly planning process. And if you aren't doing a strategic plan every year, you need to do that as an organization. Or that you do it at least at the beginning of a new fiscal year at a minimum. As you're heading into that new fiscal year, you ought to be pulling your board together and making sure that everyone is on the same page. I've emphasized this in our past broadcasts of everyone being on the same page together. So what's been your experience with strategic planning?
You want everybody to be working cohesively, working collaboratively together in partnership. This is a dance, but this year, I definitely want to emphasize making sure that you have like that COVID plan in place, that it's saying, okay, we're going to have to create a plan now this year that says, if we're able to do X by X date, this is what we'll do. If not, then we'll have this plan. And even if not, still have another plan. You're literally going to need to do, at least in my opinion, at least 3 different strategic plans this year. You have to think about things a little bit differently. And even what we're talking about and what we're inviting people into with events on Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever other platform out there, you have to think about everything very, very differently, keeping in mind that people are now almost a year in to seeing people just on screen, not having a lot of community. And still there are a lot of changes that are going to be happening in the weeks to come, and how that affects people as well. So there are various things that we have to keep in mind. We cannot have this conversation and pretend like what's happening in the world is not happening in the world right now. So we have to approach this process with greater intentionality. That's what I would say.
You fail to plan, you plan to fail.
That's right. That's right.
Knowing that, what are the elements? What do you see are the elements of a good strategic plan?
So I always say, and you'll hear this over and over again, is the importance of assessments. And so first and foremost, let's take a look back on the past 12 to 18 months of the year, but in particular, last 12 months. So whether it's fiscal year, whether you do it, July 1st to June 30th, or it's a calendar year, whatever the date is, let's assess and look back. Let's take a look back. What was accomplished? What did not happen? Why didn't it happen? Let's be able to answer some of those questions so that we can create a clear path forward. So I think that would definitely be step 1 for me. What would be the next step for you?
Well, I would say current reality, understanding what, in a sense, what hand have you been dealt? What cards do you have to play at this point? How many staff? What's our budget look like? What kinds of things have we been accomplishing over the last year? What was our income? What was our expenses? What were the major areas that either were the drains on our budget, or the major projects and programs that needed to be sustained? What's our human resources? How many full-time staff? How many part-time staff? How many volunteers do we have? And are there programs or projects or areas that need leadership or need staffing? Those are all so important as we look
Absolutely.
at what's our current reality, what's our situation look like, and the hand we've been dealt, like I said.
I want to add a sidebar too. If you have not yet done this, make sure that for those of you who made it through last year and are still thriving, are still doing well, or at least you're doing okay and you didn't have significant loss, make sure that you take the time to celebrate your team, your employees, your staff. I mean, it was a hard year to work in, a lot of variables, and just take the time to celebrate too, like the wins that you did have. And I think that's important now more than ever before, when we're not in community in the same room together, is to make sure that you acknowledge and appreciate your staff now more than ever, your volunteers, your donors now more than ever, your leadership. Thank them for leading the organization through what is such a difficult time. And for the leaders watching, thank you for being so resilient and remaining faithful in this work, because it is very, very tough. And you did it. And so,
Mm.
yay, we did it. We made it.
Don't unintentionally divide your team either. Don't I mean, appreciate your volunteers as much as your full-time staff,
Yeah,
those individuals who give countless hours
yeah.
to your organization as volunteers, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. And so, and those of you that have been doing a good job in loving your people, I'm sure that you saw the benefits of that last year. 100%. So, next thing would be the organizational priorities. Like, take the time to set, and the leadership typically does this, or if you are the leader watching, make sure that you are setting the organizational priorities, and they shouldn't be more than five. Like, that's unrealistic, folks. And by the way, your staff are tired. So even if you try to do more, it's not going to happen. And you have to keep that in mind. Less is more this year. I mean, that is truly what I would advise. Less is more. Just whatever.
Better to achieve a couple really well
Yeah.
than get five unachieved, half or 10 half achieved goals.
Yeah. And I think it's going to also speak to, you know, just like team morale as well for the organization, because we're coming out of what we're coming, and we're still going into a year that's very unpredictable. We don't know. And so it's like, tread lightly, folks. Set your goals or your organizational priorities, but also be aware of the world that we're in and the state of the world right now. I mean, Jim, you talk about the current reality as an organization, but I also want to say the current reality where we are as a world, in your city, in your community. If you're a global organization, taking that into consideration, there's a lot happening around the world. But even if you're just here in North America, like, there are things that you need to consider and take into account that you need to do differently, that maybe you've not done before. And so it's not good to just pretend like business as usual. Like, that's not good. And it's going to affect the team morale. So organizational priorities, and of course, with those, have measurable goals. Make sure that you're tracking with, again, what went wrong, what worked, what didn't work in last year's context, and how you can improve upon those things. So even in setting those strategic priorities, also make sure that enrolling those goals up into those priorities, that those are goals that are realistic under these times and in these circumstances. And will you please leave some room, what I always say, some white space on the
Mm.
board, to be able to innovate and do something and take some risk and do some things you've not done before. I think this is a great year to do that. And people will be a lot more like receptive to you trying something a little bit different. But innovation is a necessity for any growth of any company. And so be open to create some of that white space where you guys can try some new things.
Erika, where does diversity come into play as you're establishing measurable goals for yourself?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I mean, I would definitely, if a lot of organizations are doing this, but let me tell you this: if you are not being intentional and you're not including diversity, inclusion, and belonging, or DEI, whatever you name it, if you are not including that as part of one of your strategic goals, where your leadership is owning that throughout the organization, it's not going to happen miraculously or out of nowhere. You have to have a plan. And so I highly, highly recommend organizations listening, those of you who are leading teams and departments where you have the ability to hire staff and HR people, or people in culture, whatever the division is, whatever you call it, make sure that you are intentional to incorporate the diversity into one of your strategic priorities this year. If you do not, I do worry that your organization will suffer as a result of that. This is something that it requires the level of intentionality as it does of effectively communicating your mission, of effectively doing any part of your organization. You have to list it as a priority, otherwise it doesn't get done. And we all know that because we get busy, our work starts, our year starts, different things start to happen, and that can fall by the wayside. But this requires intentionality. So I really appreciate you asking that, but have a plan in place, organizations. If you don't know where to even get started with that, leave a comment below, reach out to us, we'll get in touch with you, and I can show you how to do that. But there's a ton of wonderful consultants that we can refer you to as well, and different businesses that specialize in this. But please, I'm encouraging you to have that as part of your one of your strategic priorities, and for your leadership to own it. If it doesn't happen, it will not happen organically in your organization. It requires intentionality. I can't say that enough.
Wow. And I'm sad to say that as we're focused on nonprofits, unfortunately, nonprofits have lagged behind certainly the for-profit sector in this area. And that's definitely something we need to work on and need to improve for sure. So, well, I would say the next step then really falls in what I would refer to as path steps. And path steps are, what are the measurable duties, responsibilities, actions, activities that need to take place within each one of those goals that are going to help us to accomplish our overall strategic plan. So what are the steps to get there? And we should outline, not in detail, but not drilling down too much that it muddies the water on our strategic plan. But what are the 3 or 4 or 5 items underneath each one of those overarching goals that will help us to accomplish that? And of course, remember, no past steps should exist without including money and mobilization, those human resources. So what kind of money is going to take to be able to accomplish those past steps, and what kind of human resources are we going to need for those? Do we need to hire some people? Are they full-time? Are they part-time? Do we need to bring in volunteers? Can things be done by volunteers? Are there individuals who may have full-time jobs that could do this at night or on weekends? Or are there stay-at-home parents that could carve out some time in their schedule, and it would be something that they would want to be part of as well too? So how do we expect to achieve these goals? And we should at least begin to outline those 3 to 5 past steps to get there.
Yeah, the next thing obviously is planning for uncertainty related to COVID, having that plan B and C. One thing that I would recommend as just practical steps is to pick up the phone, call a few venues, ask them what are they doing, what are the options that you have, because again, this is we're really shifting and moving into a world of really collaboration, which excites me because I love that. And I think that that's just working smarter. You can get so much more done when you do it together, right? And you need different perspectives, again, because you're going to have to do something different. That means you don't know what you're doing, right? You don't know what you're going to do right now. So pick
Right.
up the phone. Like for me, I always call Jim. I'm like, Jim, what's your organization doing? Like, what are you guys doing events? Hey, are your reps traveling? Are they flying? Are they going in person? Like, I ask those kinds of questions, not just of him, but other people that are in this work and in various sectors, to understand what they're doing. And some people are doing some really creative and innovative things. And so I want to glean from that. I want to learn from that. And so pick up the phone and call different venues and find out what they're doing. Do your research to find out how are people hosting events virtually. What are the best platforms that are out there? I was attending an event where IBM actually had designed the platform for hosting this kind of national event. And I was so impressed with how incredible their platform was, that people, as things are playing and as the interviews are happening, there's a whole chat feature where people can comment on what's happening, and they can also do questions. And it was so great because it created an engagement element that is lacking in a lot of like these Zoom and other Google platforms, and even live on YouTube or whatever. But so I recommend, like, try something, like, think outside the box. Like I said, IBM has a wonderful platform. I don't know the extent of it, but there's other things as well that are out there. And so I would definitely do that. And it's really great too to do like a lot of the surveys, like poll survey, do all those kinds of things as people are coming in of the event and out of the event, because as that's happening, take advantage to constantly survey your people. You need to survey your people a lot. As much as you can anyway this year. And anytime they're coming into an event, just throw up a poll survey right before they enter the event to pick up whatever data it is that you need to collect, because you're gonna need the data from your specific audiences on what is working for you, what they like and what they don't like. So just spend some time when you're doing that planning for uncertainty to make those calls for venues, find out what other platforms are out there, find out what other people are doing, what's working for other organizations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be me.
Well, and Erika, of course, the key word in 2020 was pivot. And, that to me
Yeah.
epitomizes what you're talking about,
Yeah.
preparing for the uncertainty and being prepared to shift. I mentioned in a previous broadcast, a couple that are dear friends of ours in the Washington, D.C. area, and they had a real heart for reaching low income students with hot meals, and they would help to come alongside the school systems and provide hot meals when school was in session. But what happened in 2020? Schools weren't in session. Does that mean that those kids are no longer hungry? No, they are. They needed those hot meals, so they had to pivot. So their whole focus of serving and providing in the schools didn't exist anymore. So they had to figure out a plan to accomplish the mission of the organization in a different way. And so they gathered a whole force of people and began to deliver those hot meals to those students who were shut in. And so the whole focus of their organization changed, but they did it in the right way. They pivoted, and now actually the organization is bigger, stronger, bolder than it ever was, because they were able to maneuver and navigate those treacherous waters. We're in a world of tremendous change right now and tremendous uncertainty, and you need to don't be caught without a chair to sit in when the music stops. It's important that you continue to do that.
And
So
this is the thing too, like, again, even with like the D&I stuff, the diversity and inclusion work, make sure that it is in alignment with your mission and your values. Like, I say that a lot. I said that in a previous episode here. But if you are not doing that, what happens is when you are now operating on your day-to-day as an organization, it's not showing up in the day-to-day practice of what it is that you're doing. So you could be very intentional to make it a strategic priority. You could be very intentional that the leaders are owning it. But if it's not in alignment with what you actually do as an organization, it's not sustainable,
Mm.
and eventually will fall off. And no one's going to own, no one's owning it or any of that. And so I think what your friends did is a great example, Jim. It's saying, hey, I could take my mission statement, but I'm sure that the thing that they were doing and the thing they're doing now is still very much in alignment with their initial mission
Oh,
statement, right?
completely. Yeah.
So it's like, don't go so far away. Pivoting doesn't mean changing
Mhm.
everything. It just means
Right.
reimagining it. And it's an opportunity to innovate and think creatively about how to do something else. So I want to encourage organizations absolutely to
Yeah.
do that. So
Well,
now, what about,
their mission didn't change. That's for sure. The last area that I want to make sure that we don't forget,
Mhm.
which is often unfortunately forgotten in most strategic planning times, is we're going to have to somehow market these components. We've got some goals, oftentimes really critical goals to our organization, and strategies and programs that are going to need funding. So we don't want to neglect, and this is also often neglected in a strategic plan, is how are we going to market this and how are we going to sell this
Mhm.
to our audience and to our donors. And I want to make sure we don't end this planning process without at least emphasizing that. And I hope that we can have a whole broadcast on what does that mean? What does it mean for us to market our strategic plan? Because that's so important in what we're doing.
Well,
So
Jen, one thing I know is that we can definitely point people to your other wonderful channel, the Development Effectiveness Strategies, where they specifically get more into the details of fundraising and development, and how things and topics like what we just discussed right now, he unpacks that further there. So I encourage you to go visit that channel, that YouTube channel, and subscribe and be a part of our family and all that we're doing. But yeah, I think set the plan. I want to encourage folks, not discourage you. It's a new year, there's new opportunities, and there are those that are looking for opportunities to get engaged and to serve, to volunteer, to give. And so we still have to do our due diligence, right? And we still have
right.
to do our job in making sure that we are always thinking forward
Mhm.
and creating some space to think about things a little bit differently. But excited to share just another bit of setting the plan for the new year, the joys of strategic planning. I actually really love strategic planning because I love being in a room with a bunch of marker boards and just dreaming and writing through. And unfortunately, we can't do that with anybody right now. And it's really hard to do here virtually, but soon, folks, soon, hopefully, we will come out of this. But in the meantime, we are here to serve you. Please subscribe to our channel, and please send us any questions, comments, anything that you have. We'd be more than glad to help you out. So until next time, we are here, Jim and I, Erica, at the Nonprofit Whisperer. We'll see you next time.